It's hard to say something about Ezio Auditore that hasn't already been said, and believe me, I've tried. Last time I spoke about him, I had him making vigorous love to Sonic the Hedgehog, remember? I'm going to forego originality for a moment, though. We are about to wrap up Ezio's saga here, and even though it's obvious, Ezio has earned it. Ezio's disproportionately engorged portion of this series really is some of the best Assassin's Creed has seen. Ezio is one of the most fully realized characters you can find anywhere. We saw his birth, we see every major moment of his life, and, as is true for everyone, in the end, we have to come to terms with his kick-ass sex life, ayo! Before we leap of faith right into things, I would like to ask from internet sorta perv to presumably normal audience member, please like and comment as this helps the algorithm spread my plague, share my content, and subscribe to keep up with my nonsense, if you're so inclined. Without further ado, this is a brief-ish history of Assassin's Creed. It's easy to miss the timing for this one due to the skipping around I did to accommodate the multiplayer episode, as well as not having a working computer for months and months last year. But Assassin's Creed Ascendance is a short film released the same day as Brotherhood, and it is one of the most inexplicable things in a franchise with holographic gods that talk to people in the future. Because Ascendance released the same day as Brotherhood, it was not really designed to hype up the game, because people had already started buying the game. It's sort of designed to fill in some extra details about Cesare's rise to power, except it gets in-game events wrong, so the short film is non-canon. Essentially, the film exists only to introduce details that we have to assume are not entirely true to the game. Ubisoft basically published their own fucking fanfiction. So we start off with Ezio killing the Baron de Valois, who was taken out pretty late into the campaign, and in a mostly different scenario than is actually canon. Frenchie is like, Cesare's got the big ol' ambitions. So Ezio goes and finds Leonardo da Vinci to ask him, Cesare, who dat? Leo tells him about the time Cesare got his brother laid, and then murdered mid-porking, while Cesare watched. It also uses the visual design of Juan Borgia from the game, even though this is supposed to be an entirely different Juan Borgia, so the animators couldn't even get that right. It randomly decides to show two dogs mauling a chicken, which is supposed to be a visual metaphor for the next part, where Cesare caps his own conspirators, but it's not a good metaphor, considering that there's no clear indication why there should be two dogs for one Cesare and one chicken for two conspirators, so the whole metaphor comes apart like a chicken between two dogs. Hey look, I just used the metaphor better than they did. I think. Anyway, Ezio was like, I should probably do something about this. The end. As a sick-ass riff plays over the credits. Finally returning to Brotherhood single player, we have the Copernicus Conspiracy, a free add-on pack taking place somewhere in the middle of the story campaign. Basically, Ezio is going for a nice stroll when he hears someone spouting off a mathematics lesson in the middle of the night. He does not run the other direction as I would have done, as he realizes that this man is calling the Vatican wrong. Much to no one's surprise, Borgia's men have brought their own counter-argument. Swords. This style of debate would dramatically improve modern elections, to be honest. A huge pile of dead dudes later, the mathematician studying the stars is a little-known figure by the name of Copernicus. He's smart enough to know that the Vatican's view of the universe is incorrect, but he's also a friggin' idiot, too. See, he admits to Ezio that he's an ex-Templar, so he knows damn well that the other Templars will want him dead for going public with this information. So instead of releasing the information in a careful, thought-out way, he starts yelling it to random strangers with absolutely no precautions. This puts his associates in the Templars' crosshairs too, so Ezio has to rush around to save them as well, with mixed success. Good job, Copernicus. Once you've eliminated the source of the mathematical naysayers, Copernicus has a hypothesis almost too crazy for this series. He proposes, get this, that the Earth travels around the sun. I was really tempted to drop a sassy joke here pretending we live in a geocentric universe, but considering that there are a surprising number of people willing to believe that shit even these days, I was risking looking like even more of a fringe weirdo, so instead, you guys get an obtuse Elder Scrolls joke. Nice try, nerd, but we all know that stars are actually holes in the night sky that let us peer into the magical plane of Aetherius. Check yourself before you riggedy wreck yourself, dummy. The end. Before we can check in on Brotherhood's longer, thicker DLC story, the Da Vinci Disappearance, it's worth checking in on Desmond. Last we saw, Desmond straight up passed out after one single thrust inside a woman. Neat. Anyway, the two voices we heard previously, who put Desi back in the Animus, are like, "Hey, you unconscious slacker, how about you earn your fucking keep and check out some memories we dug up from shortly before Ezio Humpty Dumpty'd Cesare off the wall." So we start off with Ezio meeting up with Leonardo briefly as he passes through Rome again, where he's been studying Pythagoras' mathematics. That's right, all of Brotherhood's single-player DLC is based in math. Leo needs you to fetch his assistant, Salai. Salai is stubbornly not wanting to leave his gambling until Ezio lures him away with implicit gay sex.
Outside the kingdom of God is the realm of men. Do you worship there, Messere?
Come with me and find out.
Before anyone ends up performing any steamy actions I frequently make reference to here on A Briefish History, though, they get jumped by a bunch of cloaked dudes, and by the time they get back, Leonardo has been kidnapped. The only clue Leo had enough time to leave behind in the chaos of being abducted is a very neatly painted message on the ground. Huh. Anyway, it tells Ezio to find Leonardo's old paintings that survived the siege of Monteriggioni. I would like to take a moment to illustrate the attention to detail here. Once you play the mission where Da Vinci has been kidnapped, if you go to the benches in the open world where you get his upgrades during the main campaign, he actually still shows up like usual. Fuck's sake, Ubisoft. Anyway, since the paintings were taken by the Borgia, Ezio goes to find the only Borgia who isn't currently murked or arrested for incest, Lucrezia. She's honestly a tragic figure by this point. She's been married off to some duke in a loveless marriage, and so broken by the manipulations of her family members and their worst tendency to diddle her, that when she realizes Ezio isn't there to kill her, she almost immediately tries to seduce him for some modicum of comfort. Ezio's like, nah, ties her up and flees with the first painting to find the others. Normally I'd take time to highlight all of the missions for the paintings, but considering they're practically just fetch quests where a dude occasionally gets taken from behind, they don't really need too much elaboration here. I will talk about one, though. You go to find a merchant ship owner who's about to sail off with a painting, only discover that Duccio, from Assassin's Creed 2, is the merchant ship owner, and also is still wearing the exact same outfit he wore as a teenager. What kind of grown man still dresses the same way he did as a teenager? You beat off Duccio's seamen, and as an added bonus, I took his unconscious body down to the river to deal with him for good. Once you have all of the paintings, Ezio and Salai figure out Da Vinci hid a map on his paintings in invisible ink that lead to Pythagoras' temple, where the hooded fucks have taken him. They are the Hermeticists, a cult of Hermes, who are hoping to use a secret number inside the temple's vault to impose knowledge into everyone's brains. They die like weak nerds, and in the midst of some parkour segments, Ezio tells Leonardo that he approves of his relationship with Salai, which is a huge improvement over base game Ezio, who couldn't figure out Leonardo was gay when he was pretty blatantly coming out of the closet.
Do not let a beautiful girl distract you from constructing my designs.
Have no worries. Women provide little distraction.
Wait, I don't get it.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
The number inside the vault actually has zero mind control and means absolutely nothing to Leonardo, who finds the whole thing disappointing. However, if you use the numbers as coordinates, you get a location in New York which houses the Isu Grand Temple in Assassin's Creed 3. That's right, this DLC pack was all to set up the game that wouldn't even come out as the next entry in the series. Neato. Finally, the voices are like, "Good job, Desmond, you did it!" Ah, shit, he slipped into a full-on coma. The end. I previously discussed Ask Creed 2 multiplayer, an iOS spin-off game that the main multiplayer appears to have also spun off back into the main games. Keeping this weird Ouroboros slurping down its own tail, we have Assassin's Creed multiplayer Rearmed, a spin-off of the D-spin-off of the spin-off. It's basically the touchscreen concept of 2 multiplayer with the Brotherhood and Revelations characters and tools, and that's honestly about it. I don't have anything exciting to say about this one. It is exactly what it sounds like, has nothing new worth discussing, and can't be played outside of the tutorial due to a player base of absolutely 0 people anymore, and it did not lead anywhere this time. Nifty. This game would later go mysteriously missing from the App Store. Holy shit, I actually got to the main game fast in this video. This is an absolute game changer for me. Anyway, Revelations. Assassin's Creed Revelations, our final game starring Ezio, is represented well by the metaphor of a man starting to feel his age, which is appropriate, considering. It knows what it is good at, which it does well, thanks to years of finesse. However, it is also shorter of breath, has some weird, wrinkly changes, and now its nuts are sagging a little. Poor fella. Honestly, this is the best example in the series of the gameplay mechanics just treading water. There are only a few changes to how you play, with most of the changes feeling more on top of the pre-existing game mechanics instead of smoothly entwined with the rest. But honestly, I think I know why. Ask Creed Rev was not supposed to be a main entry originally. It was envisioned as a spin-off handheld title for the Nintendo 3DS, titled Assassin's Creed Lost Legacy. Announced at E3 2010, it was the same basic concept we did get. Ezio goes to Masyaf to get up in Altair's business. Ubimont had even initially stated 2011 would be a year off for the main games. However, someone in upper management must have needed some extra cash for their Scrooge McDuck pool, and very quickly, Revelations was announced and Lost Legacy was quietly taken down by the creek and advised to think about building a rabbit farm on the other side. This didn't leave a huge development time for Revelations, explaining why this game was even more like this game than this game was like this game, even though this game looks so much more like this game than this game looks like this game. I've probably confused everyone now. It's a new coat of paint and some extra gimmicks thrown in, is what I've inelegantly stated. Our biggest and frankly most significant change is how the game handles tools now. Casting aside the first piece of the puppeteering system, secondary tools no longer share the weapon hand button, so you can equip them alongside a primary weapon, to the button that used to be the head button, which is now set to clicking the left stick for eagle vision. This is a nice change since it frees up options, but damn it if your muscle memory isn't confused at first. The other changes are supposed to be bigger, but they aren't. There's bomb crafting, which in theory gives you dozens of options to switch around as the situation provides, but outside of bomb tutorial missions, the game never creates situations that necessitate doing so. Yeah, I could create a caltrop bomb on a fuse to drop behind me during a chase, but I could also just drop a smoke bomb and then start running, or even better, I could also just fucking run away. Escaping guards in these games is only slightly harder than hiding from a blind orphan who suffered a series of recent head traumas. In essence, bomb crafting will turn into you making the 3 types of bombs you like most and only switching it up when you run out of impact shells. And if you use the tripwire bombs, please tell the rest of us in the comments below so we know who's a fucking liar in the comments. Next is the hook blade, which is a hook and a blade. This was supposed to be a pretty big thing considering it was the central part of the first image released for the game and one of the first big things to be talked about, but it doesn't really change that much. It makes climbing about 30% faster, which is fine, but not really something life-altering. I don't think twice about the change in speed while playing the older games that didn't have it. It also allows you to use zip lines, but considering later games in the series just use zip lines without it, I don't think it made too much of a dent on the franchise. Hell, Bayek straight up uses his raw, unprotected hands on goddamn zip lines. Ouch. There's also the subtle switch from notoriety to Templar awareness. It works practically the same way, except instead of purely illegal actions making you more wanted, it only goes up if you do something the Templars would be aware of. So, on the one hand, you won't gain it because you accidentally picked someone's pocket trying to walk fast. This is the only nice thing, because on the other hand, you get it every time you go to renovate a shop. Getting fully Templar aware also has the downside of Templars storming the headquarters you already drove them out of, Borgia Tower style. This turns into a fucking tower defense minigame. I typically dislike tower defense games in the first place, and this one isn't even a particularly good one. It's obnoxious, but so easily avoided since I can just bribe a herald and then steal my money back right away. So I truly wondered why they bothered making this instead of the programmers working on, I don't know, the Desmond segments of the game. Because let me tell you, the Desmond segments of the game are weird. These are first-person block-placing platforming sections. This concept makes very little sense, and it's more of a mild chore than fun to play. The whole idea is that Desmond is having to go through his own memories, so it's Nolan North's beautiful voice,
Don't watch his channel.
narrating Desmond's backstory over vaguely related background images. Gee, if only we had a narrative device that let us relive memories in the same third-person style as the rest of the game. Honestly, if they took the developers who had to work on these, and the developers who had to work on the tower defense, and just let them make the memories Desmond is talking through instead, I would be all for his story here. It could even still be somewhat abstract, using the third-person parkour in platforming sections themed around growing up on the Assassin's Commune or running away to the city, framed with the same narration over the top, and I'd forgive it. I've even whipped up a demo of sorts.
I was tired again. I didn't want to admit that moving forward might mean taking a step back. But the shine of the city had faded. The freedom I felt was hollow without old friends, without family. And then they came for me.
It's not like it's a hard story to tell. Desmond grew up with a father he found to be overbearing, he ran away, lived normally for a while, and realized his father wasn't overbearing, there really is a global conspiracy out to get him, and we're in Assassin's Creed, the original. Done. There are a lot of little things worth mentioning, but don't need that much attention. So it's time for my first bonus speed round since the first episode. Despite being named Revelations is actually the first game in the series to lack any major reveal. It certainly gives a little more detail on stuff we know, but there isn't any big twist. It would more accurately be called Assassin's Creed Elaborations. Constantinople may be the crossroads of the world and a historically huge city, but you only get to explore the northernmost portions where everything is essentially built in the same style, so variety can go fuck itself. There's also just less in the city to do, as side missions are fewer, like the more general assassination contracts, which are just gone from this game about assassinating. Side missions are frequently linked to your assassin recruit's individual levels, so if you want to do them, you'll just have to keep grinding out missions sending them across Europe. Also, you can lose control of the other European countries now, so have fun needing to run back to a pigeon coop every 12 fucking minutes. Want to check out the cool underground city instead of Constantinople for a while? Don't go too wild, because Templar awareness can't be lowered there, bitch. Maybe you just want some collectibles instead. You can have generic Animus data fragments, which unlike feathers or flags are absolutely meaningless, have no emotional connection, and might as well just be boring orbs for all that they matter to Ezio or Desmond. Looking forward to working with the guilds again? Too bad, thieves and mercenaries get 0 missions in the plot, and Romanis, who have replaced courtesans, get a whopping 1. What are your thoughts on Uncharted-style set pieces? I sure hope you like them, because if not, this game will emphasize your need to go fuck yourself. Finally, this game is noticeably shorter than the previous 2 games, which would not inherently be a problem except for the occasions where it feels like the story isn't giving itself time to breathe, sort of like Charlie during a bonus speed round. Whew. Jesus, I know that comes across as kind of harsh, and as beloved as this game is, I do want to clarify I am not seeking to ruffle any feathers here. There's a very solid reason this game is beloved, and that comes from the story. Not all of the story, mind you, as it's a fairly low-stakes plot. It comes from how introspective the game gets, and is more focused on showing Ezio and Altair's emotional and interpersonal stories than previous games would delve into during the main plot. Sure, Ezio's games certainly had them, and Bloodlines did begin to do this with Altair, but Revelations is more focused on poignancy. This is a Darby thing. See, original series writer Patrice Désilets only worked on the series through Brotherhood, so Ubimont switched over to Darby McDevitt, who wrote Bloodlines and 2 Discovery prior, to lead the writing on this, and some of the later games as well. Darby's fingerprints tend to show through pretty clearly. He writes more emotional endings, he allows more screen time for non-assassin activities, and he's legitimately fucking great. If you love Revelations despite its warts, as myself and most of the rest of the fanbase does, it's because Darby's high points lift the rest of the game up far beyond what it would have been without him at the helm. So we start off with Desmond waking up on an island used as an early dev room for the Animus, and I sure hope you bother to do all those puzzles in Brotherhood because otherwise you'll be confused by Subject 16 materializing all over the place like a creepy pervert. Since Sean and Rebecca can't help Desmond with memories they don't know he's accessing due to being in a freaking coma, 16, or Clay Kazmarek, takes over as the database guy, and other than having maybe 3 conversations with Desmond sporadically throughout, won't get to do much until the DLC drops. You also occasionally hear conversations from the real world to keep you posted that the voice who put Desmond in the Animus last game is his daddy, and they are smuggling his sleeping ass across some borders. Anywho, this stuff is less relevant because Clay explains to Desmond that the only way to staple his gaping psyche back together is to find a memory that brings Altair, Ezio, and himself all together so his brain can stop bleeding affecting all over the upholstery. So he jumps back into the boots of Ezio one more time. Despite only taking place 4 years after Ezio yoked Cesare into the Crimson Void, Ezio appears to have aged about a decade, if not more, all at once. And we actually get one of the few canon cinematic trailers in the franchise, although they did replace the glorious drums of Woodkid with Ezio narrating a letter to his sister about seeking Altair's sealed library below Masyaf Castle, which is much harder to jam to in my car.
I am wary of this fight, Claudia. Not because I am tired, but because our struggle seems to move in one direction only.
Altair's presence is so strong. Dog, stop barking, I'm trying to talk about Altair. Altair's presence is so strong, possibly from his innate Isu genes or his long-term exposure to Balin, so Ezio sees him ghosting his way around with his eagle vision, as if he's still there. Which gets him ass-kicked by the Templars also trying to open Altair's sealed library. A quick escape and a cart segment which somehow feels worse than the one from two titles back, Ezio kills their leader and discovers he can find the keys to the door in Constantinople. There he meets Constantinople's assassin leader, Yusuf, who is honestly a great character. He's the type of guy who lovably pokes fun at Ezio at most times, like that one uncle you have. That is, assuming you have the fun uncle who lets you eat pizza and watch mature comedies with him. My uncle just drives poorly and believes dinosaur fossils were planted by Satan to test our faith, like the Pop-Tart that he is. But that's neither here nor there. Yusuf seems like a beloved leader to his men, but I'm not sure he's a great strategist, because Templars have overtaken most of the assassin dens nearby, and shortly after you get there, they attack another one. Get your shit together, man. Let's talk about the Templars for a second, while we're on the topic. The Templars are primarily aligned with the Byzantines, although they didn't actually call themselves this back then, whatever. But the Byzantines are not in a position of power in Constantinople by this point. They've been mostly kicked to the curb by the Ottomans, who are running things, and will even be attacked on sight by the city guards. Sure, they're still scheming, and it's probably good Ezio interfered, but unlike almost every game in this franchise, you're less toppling a secret conspiracy pulling all the strings, and more putting down a wounded animal that got defenestrated by an uninvolved third party. Once settled into the city, the majority of the story splits into a few semi-distinct parts. The aforementioned Templar schemes lead you to crossing paths with new historical allies, like Suleiman the Magnificent and Piri Reis. Although, in order to make the timeline work with Ezio, Suleiman isn't the Magnificent yet, he's just a teenage Ottoman prince, and Piri hasn't been promoted to Reis yet, so Yusuf just sort of calls him that ironically so that the game can call him by his well-known historical title. So we don't even really get to see their moments of greatness. However, this does allow for a pretty nuanced origin setup for Suleiman. He takes a liking to Ezio, they try to unfold the Byzantine conspiracy, and end up killing the Janissary Captain Tariq, who, turns out, was participating in the conspiracy only to sabotage the Byzantines, and just forgot to tell anyone. Whoopsie. This moment clearly impacts how Suleiman proceeds throughout the rest of the game, and it lines up historically with Suleiman's occasional habit of executing someone and then regretting it. The conspiracy plotline also has one of the most signature missions in the game. To sneak into a party, Ezio and the assassins beat up the same Italian minstrels that plagued the previous 2 games, and Ezio goes around the party singing humorous songs to serve as a distraction.
Oh, the beauties of Firenze can melt a heart, you'll see. Beware the girls of Roma, lest fire you wish to be.
Here's something that bothers me though. Ezio is either singing in Italian or in Ottoman Turkish, which is being translated into English by the Animus as per usual. So how do all of these songs rhyme? Rhymes don't typically translate between different languages cleanly without modification, so either the Animus is going for a less accurate translation for poetic license, or Ezio wasn't rhyming originally and it just so happens to all rhyme when translating to English.
The things I do to save the world surprise me time to time, like learning how to play the lute and making these words rhyme.
I need a linguist more cunning than I to go down in the comments and help me out here. The next part is the Sofia plotline. Ezio is looking to see where Niccolo Polo hid Altair's library keys, and as luck would have it, Niccolo's old trading post is now a bookstore being run by a busty Italian babe, Sofia Sartor. Now, considering that at this point in the series, you can only view ancestral memories in the Animus, it doesn't take much to add up where this is going. Predictable as the outcome may be, it's still a well-told plotline where the 2 characters have good chemistry. Sofia is a well-rounded woman, not just like that, and Ezio feels conflicted about not filling her in on the details of his secret conspiracy lifestyle. I mean, look back on the last time he didn't keep his love interest up to speed on his life. Oh, she died anyway. Sofia helps Ezio decipher Niccolo's map for the locations of the books that lead to the keys, and in return, Ezio gets to do non-assassin stuff that helps her out, like finding a guy that stole her painting.
Where is it, Labro? Confess!
I have done nothing. You cannot prove that.
I do not need to. I will just keep hitting you until you talk.
Or picking flowers. Doing frequent non-assassin activities becomes something of a criticism in later games, but here it adds nice variety. Once these steps are done, you go find each key in a badass tomb raiding explodey parkour type of setup. Again, I hope you like Uncharted. And our final of the crisscrossing plotlines belongs to Altair. His keys aren't just keys, they are also Isu memory disks, where you can burn a chosen memory in it like it's 2002 and your friend wants a copy of the Silly Songs with Larry album you always jam out to. Interestingly, Altair didn't choose to burn in the significant life moments we saw in Ascreed the original, Bloodlines, or the one where he fucking fails in the end, but rather an in-between plotline primarily centered around rival assassin Abbas. I feel like the hologrammy bit would be more important than the bit where he burns Al-Mualim's body right after, but you do you, Altair. So, the memories play out like this. 1. He saves Alamut under attack and rescues Al-Mualim from a traitorous crusader who took him hostage. Al-Mualim expresses sentiments to reveal he was far more of a daddy figure to Altair than previous games implied. 2. We jump to the moments shortly after Altair promptly killed his daddy figure in the original game. Awkward. He burns the body to make sure it's not an illusion, and Abbas takes great offense and jealousy of the apple, so he be ballin'.
Forgive me.
3. Skipping ahead years past the ending of Bloodlines, Altair and Maria return to Alamut after years abroad to address Abbas's managerial misstep of murderizing one of their sons. Abbas and his lackeys have the calm and rational response of murderizing Maria. Awkward. Altair flees with his remaining son. Skip a couple more decades, and the assassins are divided as to Abbas's mediocre leadership. And so, a too old for parkour Altair shows up, and most of the young assassins decide to be loyal to him. Abbas clearly didn't read the lore in Assassin's Creed 2, and so doesn't realize that Altair has invented a gun. 5. Even older Altair is about to see fellow assassin Niccolo Polo back off on his travels, giving him the codex we found around Italy in Ascreed 2, when Mongols attack. Altair uses illusion assassins from the apple to promptly kill them, and then he gives all the keys to Niccolo as well, meaning the poor guy had to spend who knows how long hiding collectibles all around numerous countries just because Altair's deadbeat son apparently won't do it. He also has a key conversation with his son, see what I did there? That will tie into the ending of the game.
The end of an era. When I was very young, I was foolish enough to believe that our creed would bring an end to all these conflicts. If only I possessed the humility to say to myself, I have seen enough for one life. I have done my part.
Previously, I'd use the time right now to interrupt the plot and go over the key things that need to happen before you hit the endgame, but Revelations doesn't have those moments. Clay basically has already given you all of his secrets in the last games, so the Subject 16 puzzles are absent. There is a special set of unbreakable armor, the armor of Ishak Pasha, which has no relevance to the lore like Altair's armor or the armor of Brutus, and so you really just have to find 10 of his diary pages, which have been lying around the city miraculously unharmed by the elements for about 15 years or so since he died. That is, disturbingly erect. Once you have those, do a single assassin tomb in the Hagia Sophia, and it's yours. Easy peasy. The one thing I will highlight here is just how reckless Ezio seems to have gotten in his old age. Remember that first tenet of the Assassin's Creed, "Thou shalt not lubricate thine blade with that sweet nectary blood of the innocents"? Because Ezio seems to be loopholing that tenet pretty hard here. At one point he starts a goddamn riot by riling up the poor so he can break into a port. Yeah, technically, he didn't kill civilians slaughtered by guards, but it's like when Batman shoots a truck and the truck crashing happens to kill the villain, it still only happened because of you. As we hit the final couple of sequences, Ezio gets even more of these moments. So Ezio discovers the Templars are operating out of an underground city in Cappadocia, and leaves Yusuf in charge of guarding Sophia, who is still in the dark about the whole assassin thing. Constantinople has raised a chain to block in ships due to Ezio stabbing their Janissary captain, so he goes and fucking demolishes the tower that holds it in place. This probably led to some civilian deaths. He then uses a historically accurate flamethrower to burn down the fleet guarding the port. This probably led to some civilian deaths. Once in Cappadocia, he rescues Tarek's spies, conveniently leaving out the part where he killed Tarek, and has to deal with one of my favorite Templars in the franchise, Shakulu. We never see Shakulu without his masked helmet, leading to an air of mystique about him. And when Ezio air assassinates him, Shakulu is like, nah, and just shrugs off getting stabbed. Twice. Ezio has to take him down in a straight-up fight. To drive out the Templar leading the Byzantines, Manuel Palaiologos, Ezio explodes their gunpowder reserve, filling the enclosed space that is the underground city with fire and smoke. This certainly led to many civilian deaths. One dead chunk of a Templar later, and Ahmet, who is Suleiman's uncle we've seen several times throughout the story, sorry I failed to mention him, reveals he is actually the lead Templar in the region, and he's gonna go back to Constantinople and take Sophia hostage to get the keys from Ezio. Ezio rushes back, but Yusuf is already dead, and Ahmet has Sophia. They have a brief political argument, and Suleiman, reeling from his mistake earlier, asks Ezio not to kill his uncle if at all possible, pretty please. Ezio exchanges the keys for Sophia, but gosh darn it, Ahmet kidnapped a second woman too, just to be a dick. Sophia's actually getting hung halfway across town. Ezio parachutes down to save her, and we have one of the least plausible set pieces this series would see for quite some time. I already made a joke about Assassin's Creed 2's chase scene being the Fast and the Furious, but this scene actually feels like something out of the newer movies in that franchise. Ezio and Sophia chase down Ahmet to get the keys back. Ezio ends up parachuting behind the cart, swooping down left and right to toss Templars willy-nilly, and when he finally catches up, he and Ahmet have a mid-air knife fight before they hit the ground. This would be just as implausible if Ezio were 25 years younger. When safely not racing around like maniacs, Suleiman's daddy shows up and throws Ahmet off a cliff, and tells Ezio that he's only sparing Ezio because Suleiman vouched for him. However, he still tells Ezio to get the fuck out of Constantinople. Desmond wakes up to find out the Animus is freaking the fuck out because these two aren't supposed to be in there like that. Clay, despite being creepy AF and out of touch due to being a brain in a computer for so long, proves his good intentions by shoving Desmond back into the memories before being, presumably, deleted. Ezio and Sophia travel to Alamut with the keys, and Ezio explains the Assassin's Creed to her for the slow students who misunderstood it in the back of the classroom.
Nothing is true. Everything is permitted.
That is rather cynical.
It would be if it were doctrine, but it is merely an observation of the nature of reality. To say that nothing is true is to realize that the foundations of society are fragile, and that we must be the shepherds of our own civilization. To say that everything is permitted is to understand that we are the architects of our actions, and that we must live with their consequences, whether glorious or tragic.
He enters Altair's library alone, and we have a scene so emotionally impactful, I discussed it years back in a video I titled 8 Video Games That Emotionally Fucked Me Up. And I will stand by that statement. Ezio finds Altair's skeleton holding one more memory disk, which shows Altair saying a final goodbye to his last surviving son, alone in the now abandoned Alamut castle. He puts out the lights while thinking back on Al-Mualim's words so many years ago, and the game gives you a prompt that, yes, still stabs me in the heart to this day. Sit a moment and rest. Ezio, thinking back on Altair's earlier conversation with his son,
I have seen enough for one life. I have done my part.
And realizing his purpose was just one for this Desmond entity that he will never comprehend, declares retirement and decides not to grab any more of those balls. Ezio, addressing Desmond in the context of Altair, is just what Desmond's psyche needs to pull itself up by the bootstraps, and Desmond enters the Nexus of Time, where he is given a message by yet another Isu, Jupiter. I don't quite get how this works, but then again, Jupiter doesn't either.
A strange place, this Nexus of Time. I am not used to the calculations.
Jupiter gives him instructions to go find their world-saving experiments, and shows him a cinematic of the Toba catastrophe wiping out most of humanity and even moster of the Isu. With that, Desmond awakens to find his friends and Daddy are already at the location thanks to the coordinates from the Da Vinci Disappearance, and he knows what he needs to do. The end. Typically, I end the videos with the main game I'm discussing, but since Ezio has one last short film to close off his chapter, it would be a disservice to separate this from the rest of the episode. So we're looking in at the year 1524. Ezio's age has truly caught up to him. He's grumpy, he's slower, shows a lot of physical pain, and his memory is starting to slip. He also has a pronounced cough throughout, perhaps as a complication from massive smoke inhalation. Anyway, he's happily living in a villa near Firenze with Sophia and their kids. He is also being very introspective, but struggling to put his words into a letter. One day, out tending his grapes, he notices a dark, hooded figure lurking with his daughter. Since Amber Alerts wouldn't exist for another 472 years, he freaks out a bit. It's actually just a young Chinese assassin, Xiao Jun. The film proceeds to pronounce her name incorrectly the entire time.
Xiao Yun. Did I say that right?
She is a former concubine of an emperor, and she and her mentor were coming to Italy to learn from Ezio when the emperor's men ambushed and killed her mentor. So now she's alone to try and learn what she can. At first, Ezio is against the idea since he retired so definitively 12 years prior, but she eventually convinces him, and so much time is spent waxing lyrical over moving past pain and inspiring people, yada yada. This would be a boring 20 minutes for the average layman if this is all that happened. So, Xiao Jun kills a dude with a hidden shoe blade, and a dude shows up with a literal hand cannon, and Ezio stabs some guys and performs an impromptu lobotomy, and they have to dodge an explosion, and the big guy takes a knife to the eye, and then Ezio finally kills the dude. Woo! Sorry, I got excited there. Violence is the only way I feel complete anymore. So Xiao Jun thanks Ezio for the kick-ass fight scene, heads back to China, and Ezio goes into the city with Sophia and his daughter. He's clearly not in great shape, possibly from his earlier health complications or possibly exacerbated by his recent fight. So he sits on a bench to rest while his family shops nearby. In walks the most infuriatingly ambiguous goddamn guy in the series. I'll get right back around to that point This guy comes over bitching about Florence women being lackluster, and Ezio sort of scolds him. Ezio starts coughing again. The stranger grabs his hand and says, "Coraggio vecchio," which means, "Courage, old man," and then gets some rest before leaving. Ezio turns to watch his family, smiles, and as his monologue of the letter he finally wrote for Sophia begins to play over the scene, they realize he has passed away. It's a bittersweet moment where a beloved character is happy and at peace as they die, and it brings Ezio's total arc to a close. And this motherfucker goes and gets all of the attention away from the poignancy of the scene. The most mundane explanation is that he's a random citizen who serves as a good metaphor for what Ezio used to be when we first met him, who shared a moment of empathy with an old man, who then died of pre-existing natural causes. However, theories are out the wazoo as to who this man is. Is he a Templar? A young assassin recruit secretly watching over Ezio's family? The literal embodiment of death? A dying delusion? A robot? I have seen speculation for all of these, except for the robot, while no one seems to have a definitive conclusion. One of the people who worked on this, Gabe Graziani, originally stated, "This man is a nobody," and then retracted it since he couldn't speak for everyone involved in the creative process. I'll disregard the embodiment of death theory, since the Assassin's Creed franchise is pretty firmly set against there being a real afterlife or metaphysical spirits. Quit looking at me that way, Curse of the Pharaohs. You and I both know there are naturalistic answers within the lore of this series. The dying delusion also really just leads to the same meaning of the scene as a random civilian would, so I won't bother to go down that road either, and since there's no evidence for him being an assassin present in the short film, it's out of here. So he's definitely a robot. The Templar theory is the one that seems to have the most traction amongst people who don't think he's a rando. I'm not convinced. The problem comes in a few places. For one, while he is kinda creepy looking, some of that is due to the animation style. He's not the only one who enters the uncanny valley at times here. Next, there's a popular screenshot showing a Templar cross on his sleeve, but after checking my own screenshots of the scene and watching through it very slowly, it's not clear enough to say that's actually a cross. It makes more sense as some stitching holding his sleeve together. Finally, some people seem to think he is saying Ezio when he's saying Coraggio vecchio, implying he knows him, but since it isn't Ezio he's saying, it undoes that little notion then and there. As for why Yubi Gabe, which people actually call him, retracted his statement about him being nobody, it seems reasonable enough that if enough people were pestering him about something he wasn't expecting to be pestered about, that he would try and get his hat out of the ring for some goddamn peace and quiet. So I'm declaring it here, officially, with a good 82% certainty, which is the best you're getting out of me, that this man is merely a civilian serving as the young Ezio metaphor, in contrast with the old Ezio serving as the old Ezio metaphor. And is also a robot. The end. Well, that's it. Ezio's done. Gone. Altair too. And though Desi's still got one game left in him, it really does feel like the end of an era. Next time we'll pick up for Subject 16's DLC and Revelations, and one other quick stop by my old iPad, and then we are headed right to America. Oh boy, I can't wait to see the comment section on that video.